Hi, everybody. We'll get started. I want to thank you all for joining us tonight for a conversation exploring Ferlinghetti for San Francisco, a conversation with Mauro Aprile Zanetti. My name is Sanjay. I'll be as quick as possible with some housekeeping, and then we can get to the more exciting things ahead. This event was made possible through the support of the Achenbach Graphic Arts Council. If you're not already an Achenbach Graphic Arts Council member and would like to attend more talks and tours exploring prints, drawings, photographs, and artists' books, while also supporting acquisitions for the San Francisco Fine Arts Museum's Achenbach Foundation for Graphic Arts, we invite you to join the AGAC and help make more exhibitions like Ferlinghetti for San Francisco and events like tonight's happen. You'll see a link to join in the chat, and you'll receive an email with information about becoming a member as a follow-up to this event. Also, in the chat, please feel free to add any questions you have. We will have a Q&A near the end of this session. Now, I'd like to introduce our brilliant panelists. Mauro Aprile Zanetti, aka Maz, is a multilingual published author, independent filmmaker, and one of the most eclectic and socially engaged voices in the San Francisco Bay Area's cross-cultural creative landscape. As a global brand and philanthropy strategist for the Maria Monetti and Jan Schramm Foundation, Maz is pioneering a holistic approach to philanthropy, expanding access to education, music, the arts, and healthcare by scaling social impact through innovative partnerships and the art of multimedia storytelling. A multi-hyphenated individual, Maz has collaborated with visionaries such as Lawrence Ferlinghetti, the legendary poet, artist, publisher, and activist, and the subject that's brought us here tonight, and Federico Fagin. I might have said that incorrectly, Mauro. I apologize. Inventor of the microprocessor and touch technology, and a trailblazer in the study of consciousness. Maz also serves as chief evangelist at Cloud4We, where he focuses on humanizing technology and leading digital transformation for museums and performing arts institutions. He sits on the advisory board of the Monetti Schramm Museum at UC Davis and serves as global brand and philanthropy officer for Napa Valley, for Festival Napa Valley, advancing its mission to make the arts and education accessible to all. Now, Maz will be in conversation with Dr. Natalia Lauricella. Dr. Natalia Lauricella is curator of prints and drawings at the Fine Arts Museums of San Francisco. A specialist in 19th century prints with a doctorate in art history from the University of Southern California, Natalia joined the museums in 2024, coming to the Fine Arts Museums from Stanford University, where she was a fellow in the Department of Art and Art History. Her curatorial experience includes positions at MoMA and the Guggenheim Museum in New York. She has organized several exhibitions at the Fine Arts Museums of San Francisco, including Dress Rehearsal, The Art of Theatrical Design, Matisse's Jazz Unbound, Painting Color, Chiaroscuro to Screen Print, which is currently on view at the Legion of Honor, and of course, she organized the exhibition that inspired tonight's talk, Ferlinghetti for San Francisco, which is also on view at the Legion of Honor. And with that, I will hand it to Natalia and Maz.
Thank you so much, Sanjay. It's so nice to be here this evening and to be with you, Mauro. I'm looking forward to our conversation. And I also wanted to thank Alice Timmons, our wonderful coordinator, for all your help organizing this evening. So before we jump into the conversation that Mauro and I are going to have about Lawrence Ferlinghetti, I wanted to spend a little bit of time introducing you all to the exhibition, which opened over the summer in San Francisco at the Legion of Honor, and which will be up until July of 2026. So I'm going to share my screen. Let's see. Hopefully you can all see that. I think you can. Okay, good. So Ferlinghetti for San Francisco explores the artistic practice of one of San Francisco's most beloved and significant cultural figures, as we all know. Lawrence Ferlinghetti. He was born in Yonkers, New York in 1919 and arrived in San Francisco in 1951. As Sanjay mentioned earlier, he was a renowned poet, activist, publisher, and of course, co-founder of City Lights Booksellers and Publishers in the city's North Beach neighborhood. He championed the work of the Beat generation, famously, probably most famously, publishing Allen Ginsberg's poem Howl in 1956. He was obviously an author himself, publishing Coney Island of the Mind in 1958, and he became the first poet laureate of San Francisco in 1998. So, in addition to this illustrious career as a poet and publisher, Ferlinghetti was also an avid painter, draftsperson, and printmaker, energetically working across mediums over 60 years. Critical of the power of oppressive social structures, he delved into themes of isolation, of violence, of human resilience in his artwork, which was often figurative in nature, combining image and text. The artworks in this exhibition survey his extensive work, particularly in printmaking, with examples in etching, lithography, and letterpress. So this exhibition of Ferlinghetti's printmaking practice also is important to us because it celebrates an important gift. Many of the works that are on view were given to the Achenbach Foundation for Graphic Arts, which hopefully many of you know is the Works on Paper department of the Fine Arts Museums of San Francisco, by the artist's estate following his death in 2021 at the age of 101. Furio Rinaldi, the curator in charge of the Achenbach, was very influential in shepherding this gift and had the idea for organizing this exhibition. So almost all of the works that I'll show you in this exhibition are from FAMSF with the exception of two loans from Lorenzo Ferlinghetti, his son, and you can see those right in the center there. They're the Americas book and the image next to it. This exhibition was also generously supported by the Italian Cultural Institute, and we're very grateful for that support. It was organized by me, along with my colleague Sally Martin Katz, the assistant curator of photography, and of course, with close collaboration with Mauro Aprile Zanetti, who is Ferlinghetti's last collaborator, and we'll speak more about their relationship later. So I'm showing you here a few installation shots from the exhibition, although I hope all of you will have a chance to come and see it yourselves in person. It's installed in what's really a gem of a gallery at the Legion of Honor. This is the Logan Gallery of Illustrated Books. It's a space that's deeply beloved by our visitors. As you can see from some of these images, it offers a quiet moment of calm and focus within the vibrant and bustling galleries outside and upstairs of the museum. Thanks to Mauro, we have a QR code. You can kind of see it there on the introductory text, through which you can access recordings of Ferlinghetti's reading aloud of some of his poetry and prose. It's really wonderful to have this experience of actually hearing his voice and his words in the space, and we can speak more about that in the conversation. So in the Logan Gallery, the cases offer people a chance to linger, to read, and to look closely at the artworks within, often of an editorial nature, either artist books or broadsides or printed portfolios. And this exhibition has sort of all of those. It's always an engaging mixture of words and images. So Ferlinghetti's visual art closely mirrors his literary and activist spirit. It's bold, it's unfiltered, and it's deeply humanistic. I want to show you a couple of highlights from the show. So this is Out of Chaos, his poem in 3 prints. His art, like his poetry and his publishing work, reflects a commitment to social engagement, to free expression, and to the avant-garde. Ferlinghetti discovered painting in Paris in the late 1940s when he was a student on the GI Bill at the Sorbonne. He called it a revelation, something primal and liberating. While writing became his public voice, art making was his personal sanctuary, a more direct channel for his inner world. Ferlinghetti's prints often explore nautical subjects with boats and vast expanses of water, sometimes with the addition of poetic phrases. These motifs were likely inspired by the time he spent in the Navy during World War II. He commanded a submarine chaser during the D-Day invasion of Normandy, France in 1944, as well as his observations of water scenes painted by J.M.W. Turner, whom he studied at Columbia University after the war. Rendered in black and white, whether in lithography like the example I just showed you, or in etching as this one is here, Ferlinghetti's figures float adrift and without oars, illustrating the artist's deep care for the shared human experience. Painting, printmaking, and drawing gave him freedom from the intellectual and social expectations tied to his literary fame. Unlike poetry or publishing, which invite a constant engagement, art making allowed for quiet, visual meditation. It remained relatively private for most of his life, exhibited sometimes but not widely marketed. So I'm showing you here a wonderful sketchbook made when Ferlinghetti visited the Legion of Honor specifically in 2002 to see an exhibition of Dada and Surrealist art from the Israel Museum. And we can talk more about this later with Mauro, but the exhibition featured over 200 artworks illustrating the experimental nature of Dada and Surrealism, where artists such as Duchamp, Man Ray, Magritte, and Dorothea Tanning drew upon such devices as unconscious writing, dream imagery, and everyday objects to challenge traditional notions of art. So this exhibition really resonated with him, and he responded through notes and drawings inscribed in this very, very miniature book. So you can see some examples from it in the space. This is another highlight of the exhibition. This is an artwork similarly inspired by surrealism, a work on paper in which Ferlinghetti created what's called an ambiguous image, also known as a reversible figure, which is a visual stimulus with multiple distinct interpretations, often alternating perceptually between them, while the image itself remains unchanged. So here one might first see the reclining figure of a naked woman or the profile of a man with a pronounced nose. The artwork's title references the slippage between reality and dreams that really interested the founder of psychoanalysis, Sigmund Freud, with whom Lawrence Ferlinghetti had a shared interest in exploring elements of the unconscious, irrational, and even the erotic. It's this private side of Ferlinghetti that we're really hoping that this exhibition is going to introduce our visitors to. So this is another installation shot. You can see that miniature notebook there all the way on the left. You can see how teeny tiny it is. And I'm going to show you, just to wrap up, a few other examples from the exhibition that are actually from the moment in which Ferlinghetti lived and worked. So we have Larry Rivers and Frank O'Hara's Stones and Robert Frank's The Americans. So in 1957, soon after founding Universal Limited Art Editions, Tatiana Grossman invited the artist Larry Rivers to make lithographs in collaboration with poet Frank O'Hara. So produced through a kind of spontaneous back and forth dialogue between the two artists, Stones that you see here combines Rivers's drawings with the words of Frank O'Hara. They decided to ink the edges of the stones, and you can see that here, which I love, creating a kind of visual framing device for O'Hara's unfolding narrative. 7 years later, and across the country, Ferlinghetti's City Lights booksellers and publishers published O'Hara's Lunch Poems in 1964 as part of its Pocket Poet series. And then finally, this is a photo that was selected by Sally Martin Katz for the exhibition, Robert Frank's photograph Cafeteria San Francisco opening night from his seminal series, The Americans, a now renowned photo book first published in 1959. Made over the course of 1 year while traveling across the country, the photographs are a portrait of 1950s America. His work was embraced by the Beat generation, and this is the kind of tie-in here, particularly by writer Jack Kerouac, who wrote the introduction to the book. This is a photo of a man eating alone, looking intensely into the void in a way that captures what Frank, like Ferlinghetti, saw, as Sally called, and I'm quoting her label here, the alienation and ennui that characterized this moment in American history. So this is really a wonderful section of the exhibition where we talk about some of the more collaborative aspects of Ferlinghetti and his wider community. And, we're really hoping that this exhibition will be a revelation for SF visitors who feel that they know San Francisco and they know Ferlinghetti and the importance of Ferlinghetti for the city, but now get to see a different side of him. So I'm delighted to have Mauro Aprile Zanetti with me here tonight. Thank you so much for being here. Mauro was a really important collaborator on this project with us, connecting us especially with some very important people in Ferlinghetti's life, including his son Lorenzo, who was a lender to the exhibition, and Jim McKee, who provided the amazing recording of Ferlinghetti reading his work out loud. So Mauro, thank you so much. Welcome. Thank you for being here. And I wanted to start our conversation. I'll keep up the slides and please let me know if you want me to go back and forth. But I wanted you to maybe just speak to us a little bit about how you met Lawrence Ferlinghetti and what your relationship was like with him, both sort of personally and professionally, because I know you were dear friends with him, but also a collaborator on his work.
Thank you so much, Natalia, for your presentation and for having me tonight in this conversation about Lawrence Ferlinghetti for San Francisco. I met Lawrence by pure chance in 2013, February 4th. I had just moved here via New York City, which was for like 10-ish years my American upbringing, my cradle of the American culture, coming from Italy and having a French background, mainly in philosophy, because my master, whose anniversary of departure was yesterday, Gilles Deleuze, I dedicated almost all my life. And it was because of Deleuze that actually Gilles Deleuze and Félix Guattari that I happened to read for the first time in my life the name of Ferlinghetti. Because in one of their passages, uh, um, Gilles Deleuze, in a small, wonderful little book called De la supériorité de la littérature américaine, nord-américaine, Anglo-Saxon. So, on the superiority of the Anglo-Saxon literature, where he was opposing that kind of literature to the European ones, like the French, the Italian, all about families, roots. And he was looking into those writers like Melville, Dos Passos, William S. Burroughs, which was my preferred one. And he mentioned at one point Lawrence Ferlinghetti. For a fun thing that actually really captured me, he said that he was the inventor of the fourth person of the singular. So there was already a Dadaist thing.
Oh,
Yeah, that he wrote books in the fourth person of the singular. So that was the catch for me. But anyway, when I moved to San Francisco, I was asking the few contacts I had in town in the Italian cultural community, in the American community, what about Ferlinghetti? And the answers were almost all of them very kind of disappointing because they were saying, forget about him. Like, it's not possible to meet he's very old. So I was hearing a lot of things like that. But one day, by pure chance, I met Lawrence in a little bistro in North Beach, and he
wow.
was accompanied by his one of his most important Italian translators, Giada Diano. And
Mm.
Lawrence and I owe Giada our connection. That was the way we met by pure chance. And from that moment, there were many reasons and things in common that actually brought him to open his house to offer me a coffee, an espresso, and start the chatting. And I remember that the first thing was about a book because he was many things. He wore many hats, like in the photo that you put here by Christopher Felver, who had some of the greatest photos of all the Beat generation and of Lawrence Ferlinghetti, was a godfather to the Beat generation. Lawrence wasn't a beat poet. He was more on another kind of scenario of poetry. And so he was a publisher, a writer, as you said, a poet. His Coney Island of the Mind surpassed 1 million copies. He's still like in the one top five in the second half of the 20th century, bestseller in poetry, and so on. But he was an artist, as you said, for 60 years. The
Mm.
first things that we found are early 50s. And um, but he was also a bookseller, a book retailer. So he was very close to books. And he happened by pure chance that he was having Italian lessons at the Istituto di Cultura Italiana, where there was the school, La Scuola Italiana, that he considered the best in town. And the then director, Amelia Antonucci, uh, um, um, were talking together, and he saw this book about Fellini, La Dolce Vita, and Giorgio Morandi, Still Life's paintings, that was written by me. So he had that book, and many years later, that book was kind of a refrain to reconnect. That was the way we met.
Oh, how wonderful. And then how did you work with him? Did you you became friends, it sounds like first, and then how did you end up collaborating with him?
Well, first we became friends,
Hmm.
and we started seeing each other more often. Um, and I used to go to City Lights. I was filming some of his readings together with other poets, with a very beloved one like Jack Hirschman, who was also a poet laureate. Um, so we were sitting together at Cafe Trieste, Cafe
Mm.
Puccini, at Francisco, very close to Francisco School. That was the area where he was leaving his home.
Okay.
And so we became friends, of course, because that was the way to know each other better and better. And he was very interested in my multilingual background. So we were talking a lot about poetry, about Occitanic poets like troubadours, uh,
Mm.
who wrote in a very harsh language, La Languedoc, French, Italian. So we started, discussing translations and funny stories, a lot about funny stories, because I come from an oral tradition of culture from Sicily, and I'm deeply, into that kind of oral history. And he loved very much hearing those stories. So he was a senior guy. He was 94 when we met, and he
Mm.
died a few weeks before 102, which means actually studying 103.
Mm.
Anyway, so I worked with him, I would say, from 2015. And officially, he was, it's a sign, by the way, it was because he had an exhibition and to reopen actually, the grand reopening of the new location, a temporary location for the Italian Institute of Culture.
Oh.
And I convinced him to, help the institute to get a big opening. And so I curated these small exhibition of paintings, and the title was European Connection, written with an X, as
Mm.
Lawrence wanted. And the main thing of that exhibition, which was about his roots into the arts and literature in Europe, because as you said, he did a PhD at La Sorbonne
Mhm,
after
mhm.
Columbia University, and the main thing was the painting of a verb that he made up, an Italian verb, which
Mm.
was fluxare. Fluxare meaning, according to him, and I just found in my papers and books an original writing from Lawrence dated June 5th, 2005. So it's 20 years ago. And he wrote it in Verona, where he's explaining that fluxare means to make love without sex, without touch, but also means fulfill your own dreams.
Oh.
And in these 2 pages, where he's always joking, he mentions how he was connected and influenced by art, specifically in Italy, which
Oh.
was around Francesco Cons, an art
Mm.
impresario who established in Italy the so-called Fluxus Italy, and
Mm.
was very close to Arte Povera.
Mm.
So, and he said he was, joking with this verb, vuoi fluxare con me stanotte? He was saying in Italian, and he recognized how these were deeply related and
Mm.
connected to surrealism and Dadaism. And let me quote just what he said. He says, "I tend to consider Fluxus art as a wayward successor to the Dadaists,
Mm.
a somewhat underground movement aimed at, in italic, subverting the dominant paradigm of reality, upsetting the establishment interpretation of quotidian reality, and in general, upsetting the apple cart."
Mm.
So yeah, these was the kind of connections with the arts. But we have beautiful drawings, charcoal drawings.
Mm,
Actually, the archive that you mentioned of Lorenzo Ferlinghetti, managed amazingly by Sarah Stengel,
mhm,
who gave us a few pieces, Americas, for this exhibition. They have few of these drawings from the 50s. And
mm,
also Lawrence attended the then Istituto d'Arte, in Norwich, that has closed during COVID, but now is going to reopen. So the Art Institute, where people like Anna Leibovitz went, Lawrence went there to learn to draw by, in presence.
mm,
So we have a lot of art about Lawrence, and your exhibition, I thank you so much for that. And I thank first Furio Rinaldi, dear friend, who had this idea to connect us and
mm,
discuss, because he thought that an exhibition was really owed to Lawrence Ferlinghetti. I consider this an amuse-bouche. It's just the beginning. Uh, um, People should see more, should see the paintings and more drawings. But let's, enjoy this one from
mhm.
you and Sally Katz until next year, July.
Yes, July. Yes, exactly. It's up for an entire year, which we're very lucky to have this space in the Logan Gallery, that has pretty, as many of the works in the exhibition, almost exclusively are works on paper, and so the light levels have to be quite low. And it's a really, Mauro, we've been there together. It's a really lovely space where the lights are quite low, but it invites this kind of close looking I was talking about. But when you leave the room, the lights go off. So it means that we can keep the exhibition up for about a year, which we're very excited about.
Thank
Um,
you.
yeah, of course. And I was wondering if, we could talk a little bit more about, where I could, and obviously knew him, and Sally and I didn't have the opportunity to meet him, but how his kind of biography plays into some of his art. I mean, I think that the boat series is a really interesting example of this, and I wasn't sure if he ever really talked about his history, or maybe you could speak to that a little bit.
Well, that's a very good point because the sea was a
Hmm.
main theme in all his life.
Hmm.
By the way, for people who don't know, Lawrence Ferlinghetti joined the Navy, and and he discovered through the birth certificate that his last name was not Furling, written Furling, because his father Americanized from Brescia the last name from Ferlinghetti, and he discovered his last name was Ferlinghetti. And Lawrence joined the Navy, and as he said, he never got a moment for 4 years and 4 months behind the desk. He was always sailing, and
Oh.
he sailed literally the world during and participating in the Navy in some of the worst war theater, um, you know, um, of history in those days, from Pearl Harbor, D-Day in Normandy, surviving by miracle. As always, he was saying, "Angels rescue me," and then he was sent to Nagasaki after the bombing. Um, Mm. So after the bombing, that was the moment when Lawrence said the vision that he compared to a Nansen Kiefer painting,
Oh, wow.
where he saw humans reduced in a cup of flesh.
Oh.
This turned him instantly into a pacifist.
Mm.
So water was a lot of things for Lawrence, and the sea. He loved the sea. He loved nature, and he sailed for a long
Mm. Oh.
time, and he painted a lot of times people on a boat, a
Mm.
couple like this one, and around the boat. So he was also a very threshold symbol of
Mm.
limen, like not just for good things, but also for threatening, dangerous aspects. And not to mention that actually his last very painting you worked on at the shipyard where he had his studio uh, um, was a man rowing on a little boat, and he was put actually at the bedside of his bed. So that was the kind of last painting he did. But the theme of water was a refrain all his life. And if I may, I think of a poem of Lawrence Ferlinghetti where he was playing one of his after what
Mm,
painting we would like to call d'après.
mm.
He did many times an d'après or an after someone else,
Oh,
but he wasn't about quote unquote stealing as the picaresque literature with the eminence grise William S. Burroughs was pushing on. But it
mm,
was more, in my opinion, I like to see that. It was more like in the Occitanic poetry, where
mm.
poets were working on Natalia's poem and quoting your poem into my poem.
Oh,
So
wow.
I was giving you hospitality. I like to see this aspect that was very well explained and depicted by the so-called Miglior Fabbro, as T.S. Eliot called Ezra Pound. And
Mm,
Ezra Pound was a big scholar into Occitanic poetry. So Lawrence rewrote this poem called dedicated to Dover Beach,
mm,
and it's called The Sea is Calm Tonight. It's a very short poem, but speaks volumes on many levels about what you put together in this exhibition. The sea is calm tonight off Dover Beach. The birds at dusk cry out syllables of some deconstructed word we are yet unable to decipher, to explain existence. And they lift the last light with their wings and fly away with it over the horizon, keeping the secret.
mm,
So you see this vision at dusk from Dover Beach, which was actually one of those areas from where also the Allies left. And now he's just creating a Polaroid,
mm,
this Insta moment where he's seeing these birds uh, sharing these cry out syllables.
mm,
And you have drawings here with syllables between humans also. We are yet unable to decipher,
mm,
to explain existence. And this way, he loves to depict the secret that the birds and nature still keep, while in that case of thinking of the Allies going to do the D-Day, they were leaving the certainty of a land for the
mm,
uncertainty of the waters.
mm. I love that. It's just true. It is a refrain. I mean, there were many in the exhibition. I think I had 5 or 6 boat images, but it was certainly a subject that kept coming back to him. I think he was really investigating it in his own mind, and especially across printmaking practices, I think is really interesting to see how he was able to create some of these images through in this case, it's a lithograph, so it's directly on the stone. It really captures the hand of the artist, and there's something about the kind of handwriting, the inner psyche of the artist who really comes out, I
Yeah,
think.
I think that Ferlinghetti was playing with words all his
Mhm.
life. It was all about playing and writing poetry for really the most simple human beings.
Mm,
And so that brought him very close to the power of nature, that is so
mm,
simple and so complex. Because as one of his most um, one of his most big fans, Francis Ford Coppola,
oh,
said, Lawrence, looks to be that kind of simple, and you feel everything is simple, is talking about a very normal thing, but then he punches you and he
Mm,
knocks you down with the iron, which is
mm,
nomen omen, the destiny is in your name, is in his last name, because Ferlinghetti
mm,
is already the iron of the areas of the caves where iron and marbles came from Brescia, where his father was from. And Lawrence used words and even lines in his paintings, not just to, for a caption, but in my opinion, it was more like a cat, uh, like Fontana would cut a painting
yeah.
to let something else come out.
Mm,
So, in my opinion, that's the way to see the words. He's always very Dadaist. He's playing with the
mm.
opposites at the same time, always.
There is something very playful about his work. Do you want to speak a little bit more about the relationship and the influence of Dada and Surrealism as you talked about Fluxus a little bit, I know, as a major influence, but I don't know if you wanted to speak to this. This is one of my favorite works in the show. I just think it's so, I don't know, it's so funny.
Well, this one is so direct.
Right,
Even,
exactly.
there is no much to add, but you see, this is a pure homage to surrealism. You see a face of a man with a bird. It looks like it could be Freud.
Hmm.
And some words that we barely read, but there is written "Life is a real dream," 1992. And he says it's Freud, but the man, if you look at it, it's also a naked woman
Hmm.
on the head through the nose. So the eye is her intimate part, and it's so clear and it's so well done and crafted. And life is a real dream makes me think directly, jumping intertextuality speaking wise about his last novel, Live
Mm,
Boy. The seuil, the threshold, the quote that he chose comes from Calderón de la Barca, and he says about life as a dream. La
mm,
vida es sueño. La vida es sueño. Um, and that's when Lawrence, with his last work, um, was able to finally, to eventually write um, his very last experiment of his life. Because if you look into all his poetry, he's always so transparent, so linear, so simple, but again, so powerful, punching you and knocking you down. But his last poem instead gives the reader a dozen pages
mm,
of a beautifully written, perfect classic novel, where the hook is, I'm gonna tell you about my life, and his life was 100 years, so he basically crossed the full century, and but then he goes like a jam session through tons of variations, and you get into a full mighty Pacific Ocean of
mm,
streams and refrains and ritornello and references to so many level of literature. So you will find all the bookstore, all the library of his life, all together connected, like in a big womb. It's like going back where we all started in a womb of a mother. And the mother is Mother Earth, because the old novel actually has a specific theme that is addressing how we are destroying our very home and mother womb that is our planet Earth. So
mm,
that was the cry of Lawrence Ferlinghetti that was really strong about this. And so you see, life is a real dream. And then how many years later, from 1992 to 2020, 2019, it's, 4 decades, he's there still talking about that.
mm,
But to give you an idea how much intertextuality was in Ferlinghetti art across all his life. In one of his most beautiful books that I suggest, Ferlinghetti, Poetry as Insurgent Art,
Mm,
it looks like written tomorrow, like all his writings. Um, there is a passage specifically where he says, you must decide. He's giving tips and suggestions for writers and poets. You must decide if bird cries are cries of ecstasy or cries of despair, by which you will know if you are a tragic or a lyric poet.
mm,
At the end of his book, Little Boy, he plays with these specific passage, deciding that the bird cries are cries of despair. That was the last Ferlinghetti, no cries of ecstasy, by which you will know if you are a tragic or a lyric poet. That
mm,
said, we can deduct that he was a lyric poet.
mm. I love that.
Yeah, all his art, again, poetry and writing, also his um, writings for newspapers.
Mm,
He was addressing, he was raising his voice all his life against the power, against establishment, and but he was not one of those guys who just want to subvert something. He was always trying to find a form of order,
mm,
possible world, a world of possibilities against the one and only impossible. You
mm,
know, which reminds me again of Gilles Deleuze, where he writes, "Give me some possible.
mm,
Otherwise I cannot breathe."
mm,
And we know how these horrible and cry has become something just in the last 20 years of somebody saying, I cannot breathe.
mm,
And
mm,
so Lawrence was looking for a word of possibilities
mm.
against one only world that is looking more and more and more impossible world.
How do you think he felt about his own artistic practice? Do you think it was do you think it felt related to his poetry writing and his kind of social activism, or was it a very personal thing, or did he talk about it very much, or can you speak a little bit about that?
Yeah, Lawrence was not somebody who was painting for himself.
Mm,
No, as I said, he was not a Sunday painter,
mm,
unless the full week would be 7 Sundays. He painted all his life, and he was a very, very serious professional. And I dare to say, of course, in art, everything is subjective, that in my life, last 10-ish years, 5 years, I've been very close to big, quote unquote, super rock stars of the art world, or better to say, the art market. Lawrence wouldn't envy none of them.
mm,
None of them. He has done things much ahead of everybody
mm,
in that kind of protest and creativity. He knew what he was doing. He knew the tools. He knew a Canva. He was not just, like a chef who burns pans. He was a real chef.
mm,
He had ideas. He played with the tools and the media in his own way, with his own style. The way he was playing with words, with puns. So uh, I think the best for his art is yet to come.
mm,
And but art has never been something about the market. The
mm,
full history of art or geographies of art tell us about that. Because people like Van Gogh, they didn't even know they were painters in a history book. You know what I mean? Art is about feeling in every means sort of a beatitude.
mm,
That's where beat comes from. The crossroad, of course, created by Allen Ginsberg. He was the craftsman of all that thing. Lawrence was always saying, Allen Ginsberg created that whole thing. It was everything in his mind, in his brains. And with Jack Kerouac, so they created that idea. Beat stands for beat, like you beat, like a
Mhm.
damn poet, like a poet maudit in French. But it was also, when you are that kind of poet, you also have a beatitude, beat, because you are always in another world. You're connected deeply with the underneath, with where perception lies at the bosom of our ocean that we all are, not distracted by so many things. And I'm thinking more and more of an artist, superlative one, who worked on this idea and spoke and created so much, like David Lynch. So
Mm.
it's when people discuss if an artist is abstract or figurative, even the most figurative art is abstract. Even our more pragmatical, deterministic, tangible life as abstractism. You know what I mean? So Ferlinghetti was a real artist, and you can like him or not. That's
Mhm.
not the point. But he was an artist, and actually, he was more recognized abroad, um, where his fame of the great poet and publisher
Mm.
was a little bit more shielded. So Italy, for example, recognized Ferlinghetti for many years. There was a catalog by Silvana Editoriale of a big exhibition about Ferlinghetti showcasing 60 years of making.
I'm
60 years.
making art too,
Yeah,
of art. Yeah. Oh.
of art. It's all about art. This is the catalog. Um,
Mm.
it's 60 years, and inside there are big names in the art critique world. Just to give you this idea, um, but again, he painted all his life, and he also created another one called The Poet as a Painter,
Mm.
and for him, um, drawings, paintings were all means to express resistance to the one impossible world. So that's again the act of creation, as Gilles Deleuze called it, is the act of resistance per antonomasia.
Mm.
It's about not being interested in consensus. You know what I mean? So that's where Ferlinghetti stands now and tomorrow.
Mm. Thank you, Mauro.
So I want to hop in a little bit and open up the floor to questions. Everybody, please feel free to put any questions you might have in the chat. And I want to ask one to start with. There was this really interesting conversation that you had about the symbol of boats and water. And I'm wondering if there are other visual cues, symbols, objects that appear repeatedly in Lawrence's work and Ferlinghetti's work.
Well, he was always about figures. He liked very
Mm.
much drawing and painting humans in the most funny way, touching that Dadaism, playing with words like he was doing with his poetry, for sure, but also animals. He painted and drew a lot of animals, like the way they were just standing. And when you see those drawings, you have really a strong perception of the animal, just with the few lines. What else? As a refrain, words, words
Mm.
themselves. He was playing with words. There are so many poems that he was quoting in his paintings. But just to mention one, maybe while we wait for some questions, um, these days, City Lights Bookstore um, put out the banners on their
Mm.
walls. That's why years ago, and to Lawrence, I was saying that he was somehow the ancestor of social media, mutatis mutandis, because you have wall and you put up words. That is what the building City Lights does to let people think of. This is, for example, the original writing in a cotton paper of the banner that right now is at City Lights. It's Pity the Nation, which is another remake d'après Khalil Gibran. And I will leave then the panel open to the questions after reading it, if you allow me.
So we have another question here. Do you think Ferlinghetti drew on pataphysics from Alfred Jarry that preceded Dada?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's a good one. Absolutely. I can tell you that Lawrence was very aware about pataphysica and he loved that world. Absolutely. And he loved Artaud, Antonin Artaud, who was first connected with that, but also some kind of connections, if you want, was directly with Breton, because one of the pupil of Breton was Philippe Lamantia. And Philippe was, one of the poets published by Lawrence, very dear friend. And I actually, if I may say so, I'm addicted to dictionaries. I collect dictionaries, also the ones that they are not good anymore, all kinds of dictionaries. And Lawrence knew that. So he was giving me from time to time a dictionary. And I have the big Merriam-Webster that you have to pull out the drawer with the magnifying lenses because words are like smaller than an ant. And this was a surrealistic thing, and it was personally owned by Philippe Lamantia. So I have this connection to the surrealism of Philippe. But as I was mentioning, I want to read Pity the Nation, the poem that is hanging on the walls of City Lights, written in 2007. Pity the nation whose people are sheep and whose shepherds mislead them. Pity the nation whose leaders are liars, whose sages are silenced, and whose bigots haunt the airwaves. Pity the nation that raises not its voice except to praise conquerors and acclaim the bully as a hero and named to rule the world by force and by torture. Pity the nation that knows no other language but its own and no other culture but its own. Pity the nation whose breath is money and sleep the sleep of the too well fed. Pity the nation, oh, pity the people who allow their rights to erode and their freedoms to be washed away. My country, tears of thee, sweet land of liberty. So this is now the poem on the banners at City Lights. It looks like it was written today or tomorrow.
So we have two interesting questions that I think pair really well together. Lawrence spoke of his excitement in discovering his mother's background. How did that influence his art? And then this is weirdly one that I think pairs well with it. A recent article that our questioner read suggests that Ferlinghetti's use of drowning figures in many of his art images relates to his subconscious search for his father, whom he never knew. So anything about his mother's background or his search for his father that might be influencing his art?
I'm a Deleuzian guy. As Michel Foucault said, one day the century will be Deleuzian, meaning after Deleuze philosophy. So I'm completely anti-Freudian. I don't believe at all in family and psychoanalysis and the scene itself. So for me, try to see those things in Lawrence is kind of theories from the outside that we want to put on something. I belong more to aesthetics philosophers who studied from the object and not from their things. And so that's why Paul Klee could say against Plato anathema that art doesn't reproduce anything, renders visible things. And I don't think there was this kind of, yeah, it's true that Lawrence did a big research about his father. That's
Mm.
true. He never met his father. Um, um, there is a passage in Little Boy that is pure, pure, pure mastery of writing about his mother. Um, I give you the picture. Lawrence is born fifth kid of a family. His father died before, so they never met,
Mm.
and his mother got hospitalized. So the kid is taken by an aunt who brings him to Strasbourg, back and forth, United States, France, United States, always swinging
Mm.
or like sailing on a boat of uncertainty and to be destined to die. Always remember, he was born right after polio decimated New York City and the big flu of the century that killed 50 plus million people. Um, and so the odds were big. Like, how can this kid survive? Then he was always swinging and he got adopted by a
Mm.
very rich family, the Bislan. And he went back to live in the same area where he was born, Westchester County, which was Yonkers, but then he now lives in Bronxville. And he tells the moment when, after he was adopted by the Bislans, they are on a porch sitting like titans, like gods, and the family of the poor, his family, walks, the mom with the four kids, reclaiming the kid back if he wants to go. And the way he writes, I do not even dare to tell how. You have just to read it. That he says that he's not going.
Mm.
He destroyed me when I read it. Like he brought tears to my eyes. This kid was there. His mother was there, and um, yeah, it is one of the most moving passage I've ever read in my life. I'm sorry, I got emotional.
That's wonderful. And I think that that leaves us open for one more question. Um, what would you say was your favorite memory with Lawrence? Like, what is your favorite memory of him?
My favorite memory. Oh
And
my!
this is a question from your daughter Penelope.
Oh my! She's evil. Well, Penelope was related very close to Ferlinghetti because she was reading and letting him laugh every Christmas Eve. Every time he came for lunch, dinner, he loved talking to kids and asking them things to Federico and Penelope. But Penelope and Lawrence are the ones who ask me the same question, which is the ontological question about why I was and I am here in America. Penelope asked very candidly because she want to go back, missing grandpas and cousins, the language, the culture, the world. After months, few months, she was here. And Ferlinghetti asked from his sarcastic touch of the old guy after he has seen it all in America. And he said to me, why are you here? My daughter asked me, why are we here? And so I had to craft one answer to satisfy two opposites.
Mm.
And that's how in the Greek world we say the bird of the old man is the hair of the young kid.
Mm.
And I answered, we are here to give. That's America for me. The place where I can finally become who I am. And I'm a giver. I'm here for that. Lawrence didn't laugh anymore. And he's the proof because he was one of the person I gave more of my life, finishing his last novel when he was blind. I'm here to give. And I told my daughter that we were here to give here in the world. And that's how I like to see humankind, as generous, as humble, as givers, note takers. We are here to give. But a funny moment with Lawrence, one of the many, I want to always remember his recipe for good life that he was sharing with everybody. And the recipe was in Italian. He said, mangia bene, eat well, ridi spesso, laugh often, e ama molto, and love as much as you can.
Mm.
So I want to get that moment as his uh, last great moment. But every moment with Lawrence was something. Also, the moment I had to leave the room and get out of the room, knowing, like in a movie, that now the character is going out of the scene and is going out of the existence to another level. And I deeply feel that we're always connected. We're all connected with you, with all of you, because there is no other word more important. I learned from religious scholars, I'm also addicted to those kind of readings, that the most important word in the Old and New Testament is a preposition. It's not love, it's not God, it's with. Nothing
Mm.
happens without with. When we create a with, things happen. So tonight for me, this is the with. And with is like a particle, an atom of our life. And that atom with a word is Lawrence Ferlinghetti for me.
Mm.
He brought me with you.
Mm. I love that. That's such a nice close to the evening, I think, Sanjay, right?
I agree. It's beautiful. Thank you, everyone, for attending. And please do go to the exhibition.
Oh, yes. Thank you so much. Go to the exhibition.
Yes, come see it. Thank you. Thank you, Mauro, for being here with us tonight. It was so wonderful to hear your thoughts, and we just appreciate your time and collaboration so much.
Thank you so much. Ad Maiora, towards always greater things together.
Thank you.